The leaders of the G7 club of rich countries meet in southern France, with the burning Amazon, diving stock markets, and their own stark divisions giving little grounds for optimism. Good evening, everyone, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us, and now to the news. Hong Kong riot cops fired tear gas and baton-charged protesters who retaliated with a barrage of stones, bottles, and bamboo poles as the standoff in a working-class neighborhood descends into violence, breaking an uneasy peace that had lasted several days. Take a look. Protesters threw 2 petrol bombs from Telforo Plaza when police tried to stop them from advancing. Earlier, thousands of demonstrators, many wearing hard hats and gas masks, marched through the industrial Kwun Tong area, where they were blocked by dozens of riot police with shields and batons outside the police station. Frontline protesters known as Braves pulled together a barricade of traffic barriers and bamboo construction poles. As the afternoon wore on, some protesters fired stones from slingshots. Now this prompted a charge from police, wielding batons and pepper spray. Hong Kong's police force have become the target of the protesters' ire for their perceived heavy-handed response to the months of demonstrations. But Grenville Cross, former Hong Kong chief prosecutor, said police had shown great restraint with offenses committed against them during weeks-long protests. China also said police only used minimum force when they had no choice. The former Hong Kong chief prosecutor said, quote, "These rioters tried to represent everything the police do in the worst possible way and to undermine the law and order in Hong Kong." Meanwhile, thousands of people held hands across Hong Kong late Friday in a dazzling neon-framed recreation of a pro-democracy Baltic Way protest against Soviet rule 3 decades ago. Take a look.
Believe in police brutality. We do not believe in police corruptions with the mobs. So if we don't come out, it's just going to get worse.
I think it's just one of the demonstrations that we're peaceful, what we're talking about, what we want, and what we want the world to realize, and if they could help us or support us in any way.
With democracy to stand with us, to help Hong Kong or to support or to speak up for Hong Kong, to fight for our freedom and democracy.
In fact, today we just want to express that our hope for democracy and freedom in Hong Kong.
The city's skyscraper-studded harborfront, as well as several busy shopping districts, were lined with peaceful protesters. Many were wearing surgical masks to hide their identity, and they were holding Hong Kong flags or mobile phones with lights shining. The Human Chain is the latest creative demonstration in nearly 3 months of rolling protests. The protests started against a bill that would have allowed extradition to China, but have transformed into a wider rejection of Beijing's increasingly tight grip on the semi-autonomous city and a defense of its unique freedoms. The Baltic Way was one of the largest ever anti-Soviet demonstrations when more than 1 million people linked hands to form a human chain spanning over 600 kilometers on August 23, 1989. 3 decades on, the moving show of solidarity continues to inspire activists across the world. The Hong Kong Way was called by the social media-driven protesters who have turned for the last several days to non-violent means of making their voice heard. Protesters young and old chanted "Free Hong Kong," as well as the protest rallying cry "Hong Kong, add oil," while hand sanitizers were passed along the chains in the famously fastidious city. They lined up along Victoria Harbour and on Lion Rock, the peak that overlooks the Kowloon Peninsula. They also stood amid apartment towers and on busy shopping streets. A British consulate employee detained in China has returned to Hong Kong, his family said on Saturday. Simon Cheng disappeared after visiting the neighboring city of Shenzhen on August 8 and was placed in administrative detention by police. Simon has returned to Hong Kong, his family said in a Facebook post, adding he would take some time to rest and recover. Cheng was returning to Hong Kong via high-speed train on August 8 and sent messages to his girlfriend as he was about to go through customs. But he vanished without contact for several days before being confirmed he had been taken into custody by police in Shenzhen for breaking a public security law. In a statement posted on the Twitter-like Weibo, Shenzhen police said he was punished with administrative detention for 15 days for violating the law of the People's Republic of China on public safety management. Cheng was released on Saturday as the term had expired, according to police, adding he had confessed to the facts of his illegal activity. The incident came as relations between Britain and China have become strained over what Beijing calls London's interference in pro-democracy protests that have racked Hong Kong for 3 months. The Global Times, a tabloid state-run newspaper, said he had been detained for soliciting prostitutes, citing police in Shenzhen. In an editorial on Friday, the tabloid said it was at Cheng's request that police did not contact his family, and that thanks to the British Foreign Ministry and media, which have been hyping it, the case is now fully exposed. But a Facebook page run by Cheng's family dismissed the report of solicitation. To other news now, North Korea Saturday fired what appeared to be 2 short-range ballistic missiles into the sea after vowing to remain the biggest threat to the United States and branding Secretary of State Mike Pompeo as toxin. Now, it was the latest in a series of short-range missile tests the nuclear-armed nation has carried out in recent weeks in protest against U.S.-South Korea military exercises, which it sees as a rehearsal for invasion. The latest joint drill wrapped up on Tuesday. Now, South Korea's Joint Chief of Staff in a statement on Saturday said the missiles flew about 380 kilometers and reached an altitude of 97 kilometers at a top speed of Mach 6.5 before landing in the East Sea, also known as Sea of Japan. Speaking after Saturday's test, Mr. Trump reiterated that he had a really good relationship with Mr. Kim. Take a look.
No, I don't think so. I think that we have a very good relationship. We'll see what happens. That could always change, but we'll see what happens. Kim Jong-un has been, pretty straight with me, I think. And we're going to see what's going on. We're going to see what's happening. He likes testing missiles, but we never restricted short-range missiles. We'll see what happens. Many nations test those missiles. We tested a very big one the other day, as you probably noticed.
South Korea's Presidential Blue House convened a National Security Council meeting and expressed grave concerns in a statement pointing out Pyongyang had carried out the launch after the joint U.S.-South Korea military drills had ended. Now, Tokyo also believed North Korea had fired ballistic missiles in violation of UN resolutions, according to Japanese Defense Minister Takeshi Iwaya. Now, the missile launch comes days after U.S.-South Korea military exercises ended. North Korea describes them as a rehearsal for war. And North Korea says they violate agreements reached with U.S. President Donald Trump and South Korea's President Moon Jae-in. Russian President Vladimir Putin says he has ordered the military to prepare a symmetric response after Washington tested a formerly banned missile. Take a look. The Russian president said he had ordered an analysis of the level of threat for our country created by the actions of the U.S. and to take comprehensive measures to prepare a symmetric response. The U.S. Department of Defense said Monday it had tested a type of ground-launched missile that was banned under the 1987 INF agreement, which limited the use of nuclear and conventional medium-range weapons. Moscow and Washington ripped up the pact early this month after several months of accusing one another of breaching its conditions.
Поручаю Министерству обороны Российской Федерации, Министерству иностранных дел, другим профильным ведомствам проанализировать уровень угрозы, создаваемой упомянутыми действиями Соединенных Штатов для нашей страны, и принять исчерпывающие меры по подготовке симметричного ответа.
President Putin said at a government meeting that the test confirmed prior suspicions that the U.S. had planned to place banned weapons in Europe. He said Moscow was against placement of the launchers in Poland and Romania as part of a missile defense system, but the U.S. denied they could be used offensively to launch Tomahawks.
Теперь факт нарушения налицо. Оспаривать его невозможно, они сами об этом сказали. И, конечно, возникает вопрос, как нам теперь понять, что будет размещаться в Румынии и Польше?
The INF agreement signed by Ronald Reagan and the last Soviet Union leader Mikhail Gorbachev limited the use of conventional and nuclear missiles with ranges of 500 to 5,500 kilometers. Washington and NATO accused Moscow of developing the new 9M729 missile, which they say violates the treaty. But Russia said its range falls short of 500 kilometers. Russia responded that the U.S. was violating the treaty by placing missile defense complexes in Europe and selling them to Japan. On Friday, President Putin accused Washington of directing a propaganda campaign about Russia's alleged non-compliance with the treaty, saying it was just a front for developing a new weapon. President Putin also said Moscow is still open to equal and constructive dialogue with the U.S. to discuss global security. He earlier promised not to deploy new missiles in world regions until the U.S. does the same. He said Russia will not be pulled into an expensive arms race destructive for our economy, but will need to ensure the safety of our people and our country. Washington has insisted the test does not signal the start of an arms race, as it denied having plans to develop nuclear-tipped weapons. President Jair Bolsonaro authorized the deployment of Brazil's armed forces to help combat fires raging in the Amazon rainforest as a growing global outcry over the blazes sparks protests and threatens a huge trade deal. Take a look. The latest official figures show 76,720 forest fires were recorded in Brazil so far this year, the highest number for any year since 2013, which experts blame on accelerating deforestation as land is cleared during the months-long dry season to make way for crops or grazing. More than half are in the Amazon. Around 700 new fires were ignited between Wednesday and Thursday, according to the National Institute for Space Research, fueling causing air contamination in cities including Sao Paulo, where thick smog turned day into night on Monday. After a late-night crisis meeting with members of his cabinet, President Bolsonaro on Friday issued a decree permitting the deployment of armed forces to help extinguish fires and crack down on criminal activities in the region. Now, the fires in the world's largest rainforest have sparked street protests around the planet and ignited the war on words between Bolsonaro and his French counterpart, Emmanuel Macron, who has described the wildfires as an international crisis. And the French president vowed to block a trade agreement between the European Union and South American countries. Given the attitude of Brazil over the last weeks, the president can only conclude that President Bolsonaro lied to him at the Osaka summit, a French presidential official said. He said as a result, France would oppose a trade deal between the EU and South America's Mercosur nations, effectively killing any chance of it being ratified.
Et je ressens aussi cette volonté collective d'agir sur le climat, non pas obligatoirement par des textes, mais par des coalitions d'action que nous allons mettre en œuvre au courant du G7. Et je peux vous dire aussi que la charte sur la biodiversité, qui a été initiée à la suite de ce processus que j'ai exposé il y a un instant, sera proposée à la validation du G7. Et de la même manière, le président de la République a indiqué qu'il avait l'intention d'aborder la question de l'Amazonie au cours des différentes réunions qui vont se tenir.
Moves to prioritize the Amazon wildfires on the G7 agenda won backing from German Chancellor Angela Merkel, with new British Prime Minister Boris Johnson tweeting that the fires were heartbreaking and offering help to put them out. But President Macron's remarks drew a sharp retort from the Brazilian leader, who fumed over his colonialist mentality, prompting Macron to hit back by calling Bolsonaro a liar over a June pledge to fight global warming. Now, in the Amazon, this was an allusion to warnings from France and Ireland that they might block a trade deal between the EU and South American countries that include Brazil because of President Bolsonaro's environmental policies. These are forest fires all over the world, and this cannot be used as a pretext for possible international sanctions, President Bolsonaro said in brief remarks on television. With France pushing for the fires to be addressed urgently at a G7 summit this weekend in France, and Bolsonaro feuding publicly with President Emmanuel Macron, the Brazilian leader said some countries will defend his country at that meeting. Meanwhile, protesters gathered in Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, and Brasilia to demand protection of the Amazon rainforest. Hundreds gathered in cities also, including in London, Madrid, and Bogota. They're calling for Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro to act. Brazil's president has since ordered the armed forces to help tackle the forest fires. Bolsonaro instead attributes the blazes to increased drought and accuses environmental groups and NGOs of whipping up an environmental psychosis to harm Brazil's economic interests. Earlier in the week, President Bolsonaro accused NGOs of starting the fires. Brazil's powerful agriculture sector, a key supporter of Bolsonaro, has expressed concerns over the president's rhetoric, fearing a boycott of their products in key markets. Thomas Favaro of Control Risks Consultancy said President Bolsonaro's comments were raising the risks of sanctions and retaliation, including against the EU-Mercosur deal. Meanwhile, the co-founder of the Igarape Institute and political scientist Robert Muga says that the deforestation of the Amazon will not only affect Brazil and South America, but it will have consequences for the rest of the world. Take a look.
So we could hit that point. I mean, the reality is that Brazil actually did make incredible strides at reducing deforestation and fires over the last 15 years. It's really in the last 4 to 5 years that we saw an increase in deforestation and degradation, and especially in the last year where we saw a 50% increase on deforestation as compared to the previous year. It also affects evapotranspiration, which is essentially the cloud cover that moderates our climate in Brazil and all across South America, but also the oceans around the world. So the fact that we're seeing this happening right now in Brazil isn't just bad for Brazil and the cities of Brazil, which are affected by pollution and water shortages. It's a problem for the world. There's a long tradition of the current president having, let's say, a tense relationship with non-governmental organizations that extend way before he became president. Right now, there is a sense within some in the administration that NGOs represent, in a way, a threat to the government, to the sovereignty of the government. And so there's an ideological crusade right now with this particular president. And it's not just external actors who are looking at Brazil with some confusion, be it Norway or Germany or France or other countries around the world, but it's also companies in Brazil that are currently upset with the fact that this government's positions are putting their markets, their products at risk. So I'm consulting, what do you mean 5?
Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The fire that broke out in Gran Canaria on Saturday has begun to die down, but it has razed thousands of hectares and forced 9,000 people from their homes, the worst to hit Spain in 6 years. Here's Catherine Arceo for the report.
The fire in Gran Canaria that plagued the island for days has already stabilized, but level 2 is maintained and no land and air are still on alert because there are some reactivations in some areas. The Canary Island government is the one that directs the work of extinguishing this fire on the island. This fire is the most important in Spain since 2012. It has affected about 9,200 acres of the area. About the evacuated people are about 10,000 people who have been relocating in different places in the Canary Island. The president of the government of Spain, Pedro Sanchez, visits the area to see the state and everything that has been affected by this forest fire. That they hope is already definitively controlled this Friday, as reported by the Cabildo's emergency on the island. With this fire, there have already been several that Spain has faced so far this year, and several natural parks in the country are being affected. Reporting from Madrid, Spain, I am Caterina Theo, and I am one with 25.
U.S. President Donald Trump threatened his French hosts with taxes on their wines as he headed to a G7 summit in France with a series of parting shots. Take a look.
Yeah, I am. I don't like what France did. They put a technology tax on our tech companies. And it's not that I'm the biggest fan of the tech companies, because as you know, they were very much opposed to the Republicans, and they are very much opposed. Somebody came in the other day, said the election that we had in 16 with Hillary Clinton, that it could have cost me anywhere from 2,600, from 2,600,000 votes to, I think he went up to close to either 10 or maybe even 15 million votes. So I'm not a big fan of the tech companies, but I don't want foreign companies and foreign countries, I don't want them doing anything having to do with taxing unfairly our companies. Those are great American companies, and frankly, I don't want France going out and taxing our companies. Very unfair. And if they do that, we'll be taxing their wine or doing something else. We'll be taxing their wine like they've never seen before. I don't like it. That's for us to tax them. It's not for France to tax them. Other than that, I have a very good relationship with, as you know, with Macron, as you say, and I think we're going to have a very good couple of days.
After a day that saw big falls on Wall Street after he announced his new tariffs against China, President Trump was in no doubt that he would emerge victorious from his trade war and appeared in a combative mood all around ahead of the diplomatic gathering. Now, President Trump blew up last year's G7 summit in Quebec, plunging into a bitter row with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and refusing to sign the group's traditional joint declaration. And on issues such as trade tariffs, global warming, Iran, Brexit, as well as how to handle Brazil's right-wing President Jair Bolsonaro, President Trump's America now stands in opposition to several of its closest allies. His main ire, though, is currently directed towards China, and Friday saw him increase existing and planned tariffs on a total of $550 billion in Chinese products in retaliation for Beijing taking action against $75 billion in American goods.
We'll win it. We put a lot of tariffs on China today. As you know, they put some on us. We put a lot on them. We're up to about $550 billion. They've been hitting us for many, many years for over $500 billion a year, taking out of our country much more than $500 billion a year. So we want that stopped. Okay? I think our tariffs are very good for us. We're taking in tens of billions of dollars. China's paying for it. They're, as you know, manipulating their currency. I think that our tariffs are working out very well for us. People don't understand that yet.
In response, China was forced to take countermeasures, Beijing taking action against $75 billion in American goods. China reiterated that cooperation is the only right choice for the two countries, and a win-win situation can lead to a better future, according to the China's Customs Tariff Commission. And to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, or DRC, where the Ebola virus outbreak continues to prove hard to pin down. But UN health experts remain positive they can eradicate it. Speaking in Geneva, Dr. Michael Ryan from the World Health Organization explained that two of the biggest challenges were daily security risks in the Northeast, along with the massive movement of people, all potential carriers of the virus. Take a look.
We are winning against the virus in the intense transmission areas, but still failing to prevent the further extension of virus into other areas before the disease is properly extinguished. We have a highly efficacious vaccine, but if we don't vaccinate every single high-risk contact, transmission may continue. There are major constraints remain in accessing communities. Security remains and continues to be a major threat to our teams. We have to contain Ebola. If the means to contain Ebola is to invest in communities, and we've made that a promise, we better keep that promise. Or we will be in a much worse situation in communities in 3 months' time than we ever were before.
To other news now, New Zealand police hosted a ceremony for Wellington City Mayor, awarding him as a White Ribbon Ambassador. Our EBC correspondent Greg Bessa, who is an awardee himself 2 years ago, reports.
The New Zealand police takes pride of its important role in the country. Other than maintaining public safety, peace and order, and preventing crimes and car accidents, it is also working actively with various organizations to ensure that the people of New Zealand are not only safe, but also they feel safe. This is the very reason why the New Zealand Police is supporting the White Ribbon Organization on its campaign against violence on women, and the Wellington Phoenix Football Club on its diversity and inclusion program for communities.
In the early evening of Tuesday, 13th of August, the New Zealand Police hosted a ceremony for Wellington City Mayor Justin Lester on becoming a White Ribbon Ambassador. No other than the highest-ranking official of the New Zealand Police, Police Commissioner Mike Bush, who welcomed the guest at the New Zealand Police Headquarters, which is considered as one of the most secured and protected buildings in the country. Those in attendance were senior police officers, some Wellington Region's mayors and White Ribbon Ambassadors, and key officials from legislative, executive, and judiciary branches of government, and from socio-civic organizations like the Wellington Phoenix Football Club, among others. Prior to presenting the White Ribbon Ambassador's pin to Mayor Lester, Chief Ombudsman and patron of White Ribbon, Judge Peter Bouchier, lauded the mayor for his dynamic leadership in leading the people and the local government of Wellington City. He also commended the mayor for being a role model on his undertakings, either as public official or a family man on his private life. On the part of Mayor Lester, he was grateful for his nomination and eventually his conferment as a White Ribbon Ambassador. He promised to continue doing his works, especially in promoting the rights of women and children in the city.
This is really important for me. To be a White Ribbon Ambassador means it provides me with a platform that I can stand up and speak out and make sure that men are protecting women, not being violent towards them. Look, I'm a son, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, and I want to make sure that the women in my life are protected. But that equally applies to every single man, to every daughter, to every mother, to every wife in the country, that we all look after them.
On the part of other white ambassadors who witnessed the ceremony, they extended their warm congratulations to Mayor Lester as they made their respective commitments to working hard in ending violence against women.
In New Zealand is really important because it's about changing the attitudes and behaviour of mostly our men to end men's violence towards women. We have one of the worst rates of family violence towards women in the developed world. So what we try and do is get other men talking to men to change those attitudes and behaviour. And just recently we've brought on 2 new programs. One is White Ribbon Accreditation, so we're also getting businesses on board, and our White Ribbon Youth Ambassador project, which gets a change in our young people's attitudes, as well as making sure that they understand what they can do to help end violence.
It's a real honour to be a White Ribbon Ambassador, and even more of an honour because I am the Mayor of Porirua. Being a mayor is being the leader of your city, but also setting the example. And being a White Ribbon Ambassador, whether you're a mayor or not, sets that example of how men should treat women and children respectfully, caringly and with love. And I've made that commitment as the Mayor of Porirua, and I hope to set that example, not one of being perfect, but one of showing how men can actually, in reality, what they can do to make women and young women feel comfortable and feel unthreatened and supported in their community. And it's such an honor, even though it is a responsibility as mayor, to be able to do that into your city. So I take this very seriously, but I also take the good feelings that I get from being able to share, to be able to support young men in the same role, but also to one-on-one help others that have the same issues when it comes to dealing and respecting women, being able to help my brothers and my sons in how they should be respectful. It's actually really important to be a White Ribbon Ambassador.
In the later part of the ceremony, a Distinguished Services Award was given to the Wellington Phoenix Football Club for its commitment to the diversity and inclusion program for communities. As part of this program, families from various backgrounds were given free season passes to watch football games, as they were provided with transportation assistance to and from the venue, among others. Both David Dome, the football club's general manager, and Kerry Prendergast, a board member of the football club, received the award. Inspector Rakesh Naedo, the New Zealand Police Principal Advisor for Partnership and Engagement Maru Pacific and Ethnic Services, and was the one who organized the ceremony, conveyed his gratitude to those who attended the event, as he commended and emphasized the advocacy of the White Ribbon organization in ending violence against women, and the community program of the football club, which encourages social inclusion and cohesion despite diversity in society. He also thanked New Zealand Police Deputy Commissioner for Maori, Pacific and Ethnic Services, Wali Wahumaha, for his support in making the hosting of the ceremony possible.
We've been very fortunate tonight to host a White Ribbon function where we were able to give Mayor Justin Lester, the Bishop of Wellington City, his White Ribbon. It means a great deal for us to have significant leaders like him take a leadership role in promoting a message of peace and making sure that family violence is addressed, particularly by men. Men taking a leadership role to speak out against family violence. Also tonight we were able to have a program to thank the Wellington Phoenix for their diversity and inclusion program. This program is really fostering social inclusion for diverse communities in Wellington, where they are able to come to the games at the Phoenix and get free train transport, have free Wi-Fi in the stadium, and have their season passes paid for. They're now going to be linking them up to local football clubs, and in that way they're able to bring our communities together to get to understand and know one another. So whether you're on the field or whether you're off the field, you want to make sure that family violence is firstly addressed, and secondly that we are contributing to good social inclusion outcomes for our communities.
The New Zealand Police, guided by its vision, Safer Communities Together, will continue to collaborate productively with partners to making New Zealand as a great country to live in, wherein peaceful and harmonious relationship prevails between and among members of communities, regardless of their gender, sexual orientation, and cultural background. From the New Zealand Police Headquarters in Wellington, New Zealand, this is Greg Besa. I am and will always be one with 25.
Eagle News will be right back. Stay tuned.
Ako ang paglaw sa gitna ng dilim. Ako ang mata sa sahing papawid. Ako ang dilat sa tuwing ang bayan ko'y tulog ng mahimbing. Ang aming buhay handang ialay para sa bayan. Kayo'y handang maglingkuran.
Join us in celebrating the 72nd anniversary of the Philippine Air Force.
business news, this is Cesar Vallejos. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas declined to comment on the arrest of former Foreign Affairs Secretary and Bangko Filipino Savings and Mortgages Bank Director Perfecto Yasay Jr. The BSP in a statement said the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas will not issue any comment as the matter is pending before court, and to do so would violate sub judice rule. On Friday, Yasay was ordered released by the Manila Regional Trial Court Branch 10 after he posted bail worth 240,000 pesos. Manila Police District members arrested on Thursday Yasay in his residence in Makati City by virtue of an arrest warrant issued by the court in relation to a criminal case filed against him and several Bangko Filipino officials. He was rushed to a hospital after he complained of difficulty in breathing. The case, filed in April 2011, stemmed from an alleged anomalous 350 million loan the bank extended to Tierra Sud Incorporated, which operates under Tierra Sud Corporation. Yasay and some Bangko Filipino officials are accused of violation of several BSP laws for their failure to report the said loan to the BSP. On a Facebook post, Yasay claimed that the crime happened between 2003 to 2006, while he joined the bank in 2009. As global economic picture deems solutions seem out of reach as global leaders gather on two continents to take account of a darkening economic outlook, this is the picture they face. Factories are slumping, many businesses are paralyzed, global growth is sputtering, and the world's two mightiest economies are in a grip of a dangerous trade war. Barely a year after most of the world's major countries were enjoying an unusual moment of shared prosperity, the global economy may be at risk of returning to the rut it tumbled into after the financial crisis of 2007 to 2009. Worse, solutions seem far from obvious. Central banks can't just slash interest rates. Rates are already ultra low, and even if they did, the central banks would risk robbing themselves of the ammunition they would need later to fight a recession. What's more, high government debts make it politically problematic to cut taxes or pour money into new bridges, roads, and other public works projects. Our tools for fighting recession are no doubt more limited than in the past, said Karen Dinan, an economist at Harvard University's Kennedy School. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank have downgraded the outlook for worldwide growth. On Thursday, Moody's Investors Service said it expects the global economy to expand 2.7% this year and next, down from 3.2% the previous 2 years. And it issued a dark warning. Get used to it. The new normal will likely continue for the next 3 to 4 years, the credit rating agency said. Concerns are rising just as central bankers meet in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and leaders of the group of 7 advanced economies gathered this weekend in the resort town of Biarritz in southwestern France. A spotlight will shine in particular on whatever message Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell sends in a speech Friday in Jackson Hole. The Dow Global Outlook partly reflects President Donald Trump's combative trade conflicts with China and other countries, a realization that has taken hold that Trump likely will keep deploying tariffs and in some cases escalating them to try to beat concessions out of U.S. trading partners. The trade uncertainty is here to stay, said Matavi Bokil, senior credit officer at Moody's. Squeezed by tightening protectionism, global trade is likely to grow just 2.5% this year, its slowest pace in 3 years, the IMF says. Manufacturers whose fortunes are closely tied to trade are struggling. JP Morgan's Global Manufacturing Index dropped in July for a third straight month, hitting the lowest level since 2012. The United States and China exchanged blows Friday as each side increased punitive tariffs on the other, intensifying a trade war that is threatening to engulf the global economy. In a rapid back and forth, Beijing took action against $75 billion in American goods in response to U.S. tariffs announced August 1, and President Donald Trump lashed out in return by increasing existing and planned tariffs on a total of $550 billion in Chinese products. Existing 25% tariffs on $250 billion in Chinese goods will increase to 30% starting October 1, Trump said. And tariffs on $300 billion in products due to take effect September 1 at 10% will now be set at 15%, he said. China should now have put new tariffs on $75 billion of United States products, while Beijing worked for 3 weeks on its multi-tiered tariff response. Trump's promised retaliation, which came in a signature tweet storm, was announced in less than 10 hours. China's punitive tariffs of 5 to 10% will apply to 5,078 U.S. items and are timed to start in tandem with the new U.S. duties set to take effect in 2 steps, September 1 and December 15, China's State Council Tariff Office said. Beijing also announced it would reimpose a 25% tariff on U.S. autos and 5% tariff on auto parts, also starting December 15. China had lifted those tariffs earlier this year as a goodwill measure while trade talks were underway. Trump already imposed steep tariffs on $250 billion in Chinese goods, with a further $300 billion in imports targeted in the coming rounds. Beijing has hit back with duties on around $110 billion of U.S. goods, or nearly all of the $120 billion worth of American goods it imported last year. China's Commerce Ministry said it will hit American frozen lobster, frozen chicken feet, peanut butter, and 914 other goods with new 10% punitive tariffs starting September 1. Soybeans, crude oil, and other energy goods face 5% tariffs. The friction has already slowed U.S. growth and undercut the global economy, and the threat of a deterioration sent stock markets falling sharply. Take a look. The Dow lost more than 600 points to close with a loss of 2.4%. The German DAX lost more than 1%, but London's FTSE gained ground. The broad-based SP 500 fell 2.6% to 2,847.11, while the tech-rich Nasdaq Composite Index tumbled 3% to 7,751.77. Markets plunged after Trump said on Twitter he was ordering U.S. companies to stop doing business in China after Beijing announced it would impose new tariffs on $75 billion in U.S. goods. Our great American companies are hereby ordered to immediately start looking for an alternative to China, Trump tweeted. After that, the trading mood shifted on a dime, said Briefing.com analyst Patrick O'Hare, adding that the SP 500 dropped 1.6% in just 11 minutes. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell stressed that the central bank will act to ensure the U.S. economic expansion continues, even in the face of significant risks posed by slowing global growth. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell vowed Friday to act to ensure the American economic expansion continues, but warned the central bank has no rule book for dealing with a U.S.-China trade war that deteriorated further almost as he spoke. China announced Friday new tariffs on $75 billion in U.S. products, and President Donald Trump lashed out with threats of further retaliation, meaning that trade uncertainty that Powell said is exacerbating the global slowdown is unlikely to go away soon. Trump lost no time in criticizing Powell and swiping at Beijing. In a furious flurry of tweets, Trump attacked the Fed's stewardship of the world's biggest economy and vowed a quick response to China. As usual, the Fed did nothing. It is incredible that they can speak without knowing or asking what I am doing, which will be announced shortly. We have a very strong dollar and a very weak Fed, Trump tweeted after Powell's comments. My only question is, who is our bigger enemy, Jay Powell or Chairman Xi? Trump said, misspelling the Fed's name in an unprecedented attack on the independent central bank. In his hotly anticipated speech on the annual central banking conference in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Powell cautioned that the Fed has no rulebook for dealing with a trade war fallout. The 3 weeks since our July FOMC meeting have been eventful, beginning with the announcement of new tariffs on imports from China, he said. The global growth outlook has been deteriorating since the middle of last year. Trade policy uncertainty seems to be playing a role in the global slowdown and in weak manufacturing and capital spending in the United States. While Powell said the U.S. economy is now in a favorable place, it faces significant risks, and he again pledged that the Fed will act as appropriate to sustain the expansion. However, he warned that there is no settled rule book for international trade, no recent precedents to guide any policy response to the current situation. And that's it for Business News. This is Cesar Vallejos. I'm One Way 25. Eagle News International will be back. Stay tuned.
Tungkulin ng MTRCB.
Welcome back. The Iglesia Ni Cristo's Aid to Humanity continues its mission around the world to help people alleviate and the alleviation of poverty. Here's Calista Faith Ocampo reporting from Barcelona, Spain.
The members of the Church of Christ in Barcelona, Spain, held a lingap pamamahayag as they take part in the Iglesia Ni Cristo's Worldwide Aid to Humanity. The members of the Church of Christ participated actively by inviting many guests in the event. The guests were given grocery bags as a gesture of goodwill, and more importantly, the guests were invited to attend to an evangelical mission.
Layunin po na hindi lang magkaloob ng lingap o material na pangangailangan ng ating mga kababayan, kundi higit pa roon ay maipagkaloob sa kanila ang paglingap sa kanilang kaluluwa sa pamamagitan po ng pagtuturo ng mga salita ng Diyos na nakasulat sa Biblia. Ang aktibidad na ito ay pinagunahan po ng aming tagapagasiwa at sa awat tulong ng Diyos ay naging matagumpay po ang aktibidad na lingap pamamahayag sa aming distrito.
The event was officiated by the District Minister, Brother Ferlin C. Enriquez. Many guests expressed their gratitude on this event. Most of them are willing to continue to listen to the words of God, which are taught in the Bible studies and worship service in the Church of Christ.
Que me gusta y porque según yo he leído la Biblia está la verdad. Hace mucho tiempo tenía la curiosidad de entrar a los caminos del Señor Jesucristo porque yo siempre he leído la Biblia desde que era pequeña. Me me acuerdo que nos daba unos libros pequeños que decían Nuevo Testamento. Ahí yo leía, decía yo, esto digo, algún día como que vea una iglesia que esté relacionado con la Biblia que yo leía desde pequeño.
Sí. Tumulo ako sa pamamahayag ng Kristo para matutunan at malaman ko pa ang mga salita ng Diyos.
The Church of Christ's worldwide aid to humanity gains praises and positive feedbacks from different parts of the world. A special program was held to entertain the guests. The band together showcased the talents of the young members of the Church of Christ in playing musical instruments and singing Christian songs. The event was successful because of the cooperation of the members of the Church of Christ and their willingness to help those who are in need.
Ako ay nag-aakay sapagkat gusto ko din pong ipamahagi ang ating pananampalataya dito sa Iglesia ni Cristo at upang makapamahagi din po ng mga salita ng Diyos upang sila din po ay maligtas.
Ito po ay hindi nga pamamahayag para po matulungan din yung ating mga kababayan. At tulad po ngayon, nakapag-akay nga po, nakakatuwa nga po dahil yung ating inaakay ay yung kanyang husband po ay India. At sila pong mag-ina ay nainiyahan po natin sa ganitong pamamahayag sa araw na ito.
Nag-aakay ako dahil gusto ko rin ang kapwa ko, yung aking pananampalataya ay mai-share ko sa kanila, malaman nila yung katotohanan ng paglilingkod sa ating Ama.
From Barcelona, Spain, I am Calista Faith Ocampo and I am 1 with 25.
All right, here's Ben Bernaldez for Sports News.
Meet James Fox, a 37-year-old entrepreneur and aspiring humanitarian who was born and raised in the heart of London, United Kingdom. To an English father and an Irish mother, is trying to accomplish something really big challenge for a great cause. In March 2019, he made the greatest leap of faith of his life, quitting his 12-year career as a London train driver and also the home of comforts of the UK, to pursue a long-held dream of living in the Philippines, a dream that has engulfed him from the very first day he set foot in the country back in 2012. Since then, he has been traveling to the Philippines practically every year, where his overwhelming and ever-growing love for the country and its amazing people have stolen a little piece of his heart every time he left to go back to London. After meeting Manny in 2013 in one of his trips in Jansan, he became part of his training camp, joining Manny in his run and workouts in all of his Manny's fight. Fast forward to 2019, after Manny's fight with Thurman, James came to the Philippines and decided to live in Manila. He came to a big realization in wanting to do something for the Philippines, who he now calls as his home. Always been a sports fan and an athlete, he wanted to do something big of a challenge and would benefit the Filipinos who are struggling in life. And that he decided to run 30 ultramarathons in 30 days and chose the Manny Pacquiao Foundation to be its beneficiary, who is helping build homes and uplift the lives of many unprivileged Filipino families.
This ultramarathon was something that I've been thinking of for over a year now. I wanted to do something which was a little bit crazy and unique, to push my limits physically and mentally, see how far I could go, test myself against the elements. As we've seen out there today, there's a typhoon. And also to raise awareness and money for the Manny Pacquiao Foundation for their housing project that they're currently putting together.
After many months of training and preparation, James flew to Lawag City last Thursday, where he is supposed to start his first day of run on Friday, August 23rd. At 5:30 a.m., he started his run from Lawag City, and the goal is to cover 30 miles of that day.
it just started hitting me what I'm about to do. Bit of apprehension, bit of fear, a lot of excitement. But I just want to say thanks to all you guys out there for the messages of support that you've been giving me.
Then some challenges came to him. Midway to his run, he experienced blisters on his foot, a problem he had months ago. Then heavy rainfall came, which halted his run. He has no support team, only by himself. He faced and finished his first day of ultramarathon. Another unexpected problem came in the morning that made James change his plan. Severe tropical storm has hit Lawag City, and overnight of non-stop rains has flooded the city. James is not stopping, still pushing forward, and decided to fight on, and commencing in Manila on Monday, and will continue the 29 days of ultramarathon. This has been Ben Bernales for EN Sports, and I'm 1 with 25.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on Eagle News International, I'm Alma Angeles, always 1 with 25. Good night.